Welcome, brothers and sisters. My name is Eros and I am the Soulmaker. Today we will talk a little bit about tips and tricks on candle magic. At least my tips and tricks. Now, the first obvious one is that you need to put the technique to the test. Simply learning how it is done with the previous video or by the book will not be enough to really get a feel for candle magic, on how it works and if it works for you, if it's a right technique for you, or you need to explore other kinds of spell work. So, as always, never blindly follow instruction. Put the techniques to the test. Also, remember that skill is practice plus experience multiplied by knowledge. So knowledge is only one of the factors that will determine your success, that will determine that you actually develop the skill of candle magic crafting. Plus, unless you practice the technique, you obviously will never find out where there are a few difficulties for you, the things you can resolve or slightly modify to make it work better for you. Remember to take good notes, not only for the analysis of your spell work, but also because if you fail to take good notes about your spell, I can guarantee you, just like any other practitioner of the art, that one day or another you're gonna regret forgetting something or can't repeat a spell that worked really well for you. Forgive me. Now, of course, while you are practicing, you will also find out what practical things work better for you. So the angle of your altar, how you want to take care of your working space, even simple things like what utensil you want to use to carve the sigil on your candles. Is traditionally the dagger, of course, but you may want to use different or more precise things. Some practitioners, for example, use needles or nails. I tend to work well with sharpened tweezers, tongs. I think they're called tongs. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course. So anything that you want to practically use in the crafting of your candle. Also, remember, of course, in the beginning we are all a little skeptical about spell work in general, magic in general, but when you are practicing a spell, what you want to do is practice the suspension of disbelief. So I don't need you to blindly believe in magic, but in the moment in which you are crafting your spell, I need you to take for granted that it's going to work. You don't want to insert doubt on your spell, even just for the duration of the spell. When you are practicing it, you are going to believe it's gonna work. Then you can get back to your normal set of beliefs. In time, you will learn that it works. Then, let's talk a little bit about enthusiasm when you are practicing spell work, when you begin to practice spell work. Now, enthusiasm could be your best ally or your worst enemy. It's gonna be an enemy if you go to the excess. So, for example, if you are overwhelmed from the information and from the tension that you are going to actually practice magic, sometimes you will get too anxious to try, or you're not going to try in the first place because it will feel too much. If you have too little enthusiasm for your spell work, you tend to get too mechanical without actually pushing your desire into your spell. So it will not be as effective. You want to find a balance between too excited for your spell working and too little. Remember that a spell begins when you start to plan it. That's when the enthusiasm will start to build up. That's when you're actually starting to cast your spell, when you are planning it. And with these feelings of enthusiasm, we are starting to build up power. We are going to start to fill ourselves with desire, with the desire that we are going to push inside the technique. Also, in talking about enthusiasm, you don't want to be overwhelmed by the information. Take your time to learn the information through the previous videos, somewhere here. But don't start to fill your house with books straight away. I mean, books are amazing. I would be an hypocrite to say otherwise. I got a ton of books about magic, but in this phase, once you've learned the technique, you want to first practice a little bit, get the feel of it, so you can even start to recognize which books are better for you and which maybe are just a put together collection of random information. Unfortunately, not all books about magic are good. This being said, there are books about a lot of different traditions. So, of course, we all get to a phase in which we got some sort of thirst for knowledge, and we may want to buy a load of books, but you will not be able to combine all the tradition all together to make some sort of a supreme knowledge. They are simply different traditions. Most are extremely interesting, most are extremely well working, but you're going to need to practice one thing at a time. So balance your knowledge with your practice. How can I say it? even if I told you all of my experience in magic, it will not be the same as if you've practiced the information in your spell working. It's just like a travel. If I have traveled to somewhere and I tell you everything I did, everything I've seen in deep details, it will not be the same as if you had made that journey. I hope it's clear. Let's go on. About the different traditions. Most traditions are valid, but we need to understand first how the technique is done. This is our approach. Most traditions explain how things are done, why they are done, but the different traditions are something we need to resonate with. That's not a right path and a wrong one. You need to feel the tradition resonates with you. you need to be called by that tradition, and in time you will find your tradition, our personal tradition, our technique. Explain the fil rouge of why magic works. Then, if you want to step to something more religious, just like Voodoo or Kimbanda, it will be fine. The basic of how magic works will be the same. You will do things in different way, but at least you got a baseline. You will be able to recognize why it works and what works. So let's say that different traditions are, with a programming analogy, just like different programming softwares. They most of them work really well, but they are different. You can just mash things up together most of the time. Our tradition works more just like an operating system. So you will always be able to add any tradition you may want to follow. Just remember not to put them all together, because different systems have different correspondences. We've talked a lot about correspondences. And remember that in picking different tradition, you must also follow your logic. So they need to be explainable, not dogmatic. So you will personally resonate with your tradition when the time is coming. We're talking a little more about books. Books usually are part of different systems, or they are spell books. But you can even find spells online. Just understand why you are consulting a book of spells, because most of the time I see that new practitioners simply take a spell from the book and try to cast it, and maybe not even ask himself or herself why things are done that way. So actually we use spell books to just like exercise books for our logic. So I take a spell book, I read a spell, and I try to understand why those components are in place and why those actions are made. It's an exercise book. You already have all the information to cast any sort of spell. So if you decide to go out of how we've learned to cast planetary spells, you are going to do that as an exercise to understand why the practitioner has written a spell in that way. And talking about books in a sense, let's talk about the difference between doing things by the book and doing experiments. Now, as you know, I always tell you to do your experimentation, to try to find what's better for you. But at the same time, if you want to criticize a technique, if you want to innovate a system, you first need to know the technique, to understand the system. Otherwise, any sort of innovation will be quite futile. You're building without foundations. What I want to say is that I don't want you to blindly follow instruction, but I still need you to follow the instructions, not do random things to see if they work or not. So following instructions, you will find the flows of the technique, if the flows the technique has for you, if any. You will find your flows in applying the technique, and most of all, you will find your personal preferences. So follow the technique by the book, follow your logic, because remember that we are all researchers and students of the magical art. And once you've got the feel for the technique, once you've learned the technique, you can use your intuition to slightly modify our technique for what works better for you. And of course, once you've learned how to practice divination, if possible, you will also use divination to innovate your version of our technique. That's what I wanted to say. In the end, you will adapt our technique to your magical pet working and modify it towards what works better for you, towards your version of candle magic. Also, using divination if possible, especially before a spell. Using divination is always a good thing. Then, whatever the tradition that you want to follow, whatever the system that you want to use in any sort of spell work, remember to ask for something in the realm of possibilities. Otherwise, you are going to self-sabotage yourself, because we all have a subconscious programming. So if we want to, if we cast for something that we don't believe is possible from the start, it will just never happen, because the doubt inside us will be too much, and we insert the impossibility of the thing inside our spell to block it from the beginning. So for example, if you are struggling with money, don't cast to be a billionaire. You need to proceed with easier steps and reprogram your subconscious. Anytime it will be easier, but you are going to have a plan, and with multiple spells you are going to get to whatever you consider being rich. But you won't go with one single spell straight away. It just don't work that way. Work with more spells in time. Then, of course, sometimes unbelievable things can happen, especially when you're not too specific with what you are asking. And now, the single most important thing that you want to remember for your magical workings. You want to, once you've cast a spell, follow up with action. You don't want to stay still and wait for the spell to simply be. It's going to happen, but you want to follow up with action. So, of course, since you don't want to obsess yourself with the memory of your spell, what you want to do is choose in advance, even before you've casted your spell, that you are going to do certain things to facilitate the manifestation of your spell. For example, if you cast to find love, you need to actually go outside to maximize the opportunity of meeting someone new. If you cast for money, you actually want to apply for jobs and do investments, and so on, without thinking again and again and again about your spell. Simply facilitate the manifestation, making choices in advance to follow up with action. Now, we are at the end of this series about spell work. Of course, there will be extra episodes, as we always do, and the next series will be about the elements. So we are going to go even more in depth about the elements. And of course, then we are going to go to learn. We are going to learn more in depth the planets. But if I manage to, we are going to do extra videos here and there. Time is sometimes a problem, so I can't guarantee any extra video, but I will at least try to continue do a video a week. Let me know if you got any questions. As always, with direct message on the comments below. It's been an honor to have you on this series, so I deeply thank you for your kind attention, and as always, may eternal light shine